Patriots selecting Drake Maye might be the very best thing that's happened to the team and franchise in the last several years. Other than that, not so great. Welcome to the All 32 pod. Mike Giardi alongside Will Parkinson. Week 9 pretty much in the books. Not an awesome slate, but there are some interesting things that are happening around the league. A reminder that this show is brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. And Game Time, best tickets, best prices to get you into any event you want to see. Will, a bunch of games to get through, a bunch of events to get through. But let's start with that Patriots-Titans game, 2017. Titans win in overtime. My first takeaway, those are two very bad football teams.
Yeah, they're both very – apologies. They're very bad. But the one thing I think my biggest takeaway was that Drake Maye has given Patriots fans a reason to fully believe. Again, the interception at the end there, he said he misjudged the wind. He had a shot. It was there, to go win it. I thought Mayo probably should have gone for two. Young, a team that is just trying to figure out a way. If you lose on the road like that, I'd rather get killed for being too aggressive. The defense was cooked, and there's a lot of things to question. But I thought the fight and the drive, for this team, I thought playing a competitive game. Look, they have a franchise quarterback, or they're close to people being ready for that, and they might pick number 1 in the draft, and you might end up with Travis Hunter, and when you have Christian Gonzalez and Travis Hunter on either side for the next 7-8 years, and Hunter on offense and the whole thing, and maybe that's the thing, even though he thinks he's going to make the choice not to wear Tom's number. That was insane. I'm not sure how big your ego has to be to assume that the Patriots would unretire the number of the best player that's ever played the sport. But all that said, I think the Titans need this game so badly, and I felt like the last thing the Titans wanted to see was the Patriots go for 2 there. I felt like they had a shot, and it just kind of – if I was a Patriots fan, I'm like, damn, man, I'd like to see it just go for the kill. And Maye makes that great play. I thought him using his legs. We saw it against the Jets. He's got to protect himself. I've been a little concerned with – he takes these, comedic, shots to the head that are, very Jaden Daniels-esque in college where you're like, dude –
He got
your head.
Stood up and bent over basically on one of them, with a helmet came riding up his face, and it's like you just were in the protocol. And granted, it feels like they didn't think he had a concussion. If you between the post game from Drake yesterday and from Mayo on Monday, we're taping this on early Monday afternoon. Didn't feel like he had a concussion, but okay, so maybe you didn't have a concussion, but don't go inviting one. He slid a few times. He went head first once, but in general, he did take a few hellacious shots when he was running, and he's got to be more careful about that because, again, this whole thing now is built around him being the foundational piece for a team that's struggling to turn the page and find, their next franchise quarterback, which they haven't been able to do Tom walked out the building in 2019, right? You've had Cam Newton, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Brian Hoyer, Jared Stidham. You've kind of run the gamut here, and you finally feel like maybe you've hit one here after just 4 starts. So you're right about that. He gives them hope.
Excitement. You see
right?
Ramondre smiling for the first time I feel like I've seen him smile in years.
I mean, that play was ridiculous, right? From snap to throw, almost 12 seconds. It's the second longest play in the next gen stats era, only behind the Jaden Daniels Hail Mary from the week prior. And to keep his head up the entire time, dodge the rush several times, including Arden Key. Should have looked like he was going to have him sacked, duck that, and then 2 guys coming at him at the last second there, and he stands in there and still makes a strong enough throw, basically from one hash to the other side of the field to get it done to Stevenson. Was a great play. Mayo talked about he didn't want to talk about the not going for 2 in the aftermath. He basically said it was a good question, but I don't want to get into that.
He might be the only guy that didn't go for 2 or a bad 4th down call in the entire league yesterday that he should have. Brian Dable and Sirianni would have gone. It's just I felt like that on the road down 1 when we saw Dable do it in Tennessee as a first-year coach with a struggling team, very similar, and it sparked that team to a couple wins in a row. And again, maybe that wouldn't have done it for the Patriots, but it would have felt damn good to say, hey, the game ending on, even if they miss it there, the game ending on a Drake Maye touchdown is the last thing in your mind, as opposed to that pick wasn't great.
Right.
The idea was there, and he was open per se. I mean, he would have taken a perfect throw, but I feel like it's just a little disheartening because the defense kind of got walked down, and on that last drive they were gassed, and no one could blame them. And then Drake Maye throws the pick. It kind of takes away the a little bit of the excitement of that touchdown. And again, if they would have lost, they would have lost. I don't think anybody, and if any of you guys would have killed him for it, I just think it would have been like, wow, Mayo's showing a little. It's very opposite of the way he's coached, and I felt like that would have been a nice little different.
When we talked to him today and we asked him about it, so he was asked if fatigue played a role in it, right? You talk about, I just mentioned that it was actually 15 seconds to play from start to finish when Ramondre finally reeled it in, and you go 50 yards in a minute and 45 with no timeout, so you're in the hurry up mode, and big guys holding blocks forever. And I can understand if that was his rationale. He said there were many factors that went into it, but he wouldn't say what the overriding factor was. And had he gone for it, like you said, you would have criticized me. It was the result, right? If we make it, it's great. But if we don't, then you're going to criticize. I went for 2 earlier in the year. I got criticized for the Jacksonville game. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But you have to understand where your team is at. Like, I felt like actually both coaches, Callahan too, not necessarily coaching to win that game. Let's put it this way. On the NFL coaching 101 tapes, those guys, they might show a couple examples from those guys on how not to do it as opposed to how to do it. It was not exactly a battle of the brains in that game. And the other thing and you mentioned it with the hits and sort of the energy that Maye's bringing, is there too much on him? They can't run the ball. 12 carries for their running backs yesterday for 15 yards. In the last 3 games total with the running backs, 49 carries, 85 yards. Drake's led them in rushing 3 of the 4 games, and he would have led it in the Jets game had he not got knocked out with a concussion, right? I mean, he already had 38 yards. Ramondre finished with 46 or 48. So I'm sure one more scramble and he would have surpassed that. And while he's not buckling under the pressure of this, it just feels like, man, you're asking for trouble if you can't find another way to move the football and protect your quarterback. And they can't. I mean, they screwed around with their offensive line yesterday. They went back to the combination from 2 weeks ago. It just feels like they're a little bit rudderless here in terms of the decisions they're making and the direction they're going.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 209 yards rushing in 4.5 games, roughly, or 3.5 games, really, if you want to, combine the 2 Jets games into one, just because he didn't want to really play. But I just keep thinking to myself, we're seeing the comments from Alex Van Pelt are so contrary to what they're actually doing. The whole thing is I think he said it before or during the Jags game. We don't want to make Drake throw it 50 times. We don't want to put up too much on his shoulders. We'd love to be able to, but we really don't want him throwing 35, 40 times. We'd love to be less there, establish a balanced offense. And I know it's all BS coach speak. I'm not an idiot, but 41 attempts yesterday, plus another 8 carries. I mean, that's 59 times he's getting put in harm's way, right? It's the truth. 37 times against Jacksonville, another 3 rushes. So that's another 30 there. It's got it more and more. And again, it's to the point where you just got to find the balance to me of maybe some quick games, a little more quick game stuff, a little more. The screens don't work. They run. Right. They might be the worst screen team I've ever seen. I mean, that's the one thing.
They said their aim this summer was to be the best.
Yeah, and it's just not. You don't see that, right? So I just would like to see them don't get so aggressive on giving up on the run. Maybe a couple of draw plays would be nice. Some read option with Drake may be cool. I don't know. I'm a little annoyed in the aspect of we're seeing so much good, and the Patriots are playing harder than they have in the last couple of weeks. They're much more competitive, but it just feels like the coaching is not up to standard. I don't know. I don't see this awesomely well coached team. I feel like I see they're not bad, but they're not really elevating anyone. And then on top of that, some of the talent comes out, and then obviously offensive line and some of the defensive stuff. You see some of the issues, right? You speed at linebacker and things like that. That's fair, but that's fixable. I worry long term. They have the quarterback, not the coach, or a coaching staff at least. Maybe Mayo's a good coach, just surrounded by a not great staff. Which we kind of had this conversation about Robert Saleh and the offensive staff. He put that staff together. So whose fault is that? I don't know. I wonder if in the offseason we're talking about is Alex Van Pelt maybe one and done, and they bring in somebody else because now Drake Maye looks good and a coach might want to attach themselves to him. Maybe a receiver wants to come here now because Maye's showing these flashes. But I don't know. This Patriots team is very confusing to me because at times it's exactly who we thought they were. And other times you're like, oh man, they're close. Like I see it. And then other times you're like, what was that? Every game feels like that's literally my emotions watching that game.
Yeah. And yesterday was and we talked about it on Friday. It was like so critical for them. Tennessee's a bad football team. And we not that you're a good football team. We're not saying that at all, but like you just beat the Jets. You had not shot yourself in the foot that game, and it was sort of like, let's just kind of need to carry that momentum over. And it didn't. Tennessee goes down the field and scores, takes the early lead, and then
Tony Pollard looked really good yesterday.
Pollard looked fantastic. And he was questionable, had the foot, didn't practice all week, and then he was phenomenal. But there you go again. We talked about the tough thing. We rehashed the tough thing. But again, the three things that Mayo said that this came from Belichick, and I think every coach around the league shares it: run the ball, stop the run, cover kicks. That's how you show you're a tough team. Well, they covered kicks yesterday, so they had that going for them. Gave up 167 yards on the ground, 4.4 yards per carry, and really got it shoved down their throat in the fourth quarter in particular. And then obviously, as I mentioned, 12 carries for 15 yards rushing with your running back. So while Drake is running around for 95 yards, the rest of your group can't do squat. So they can't do these things. And that's, hey, look, we understand talent's not great. This was going to take more than 1 year. It's definitely going to take more than 1 year to sort of rebuild it. But I think Doug Codd from the Boston Herald put it out there. I think they have 14 or 15 guys on their roster that were cut by someone else this year are on your 53. And that just tells you how far the roster has fallen, and also tells you a little bit about how they didn't have a good offseason between thus far the production they're getting out of the draft, where Drake's been fantastic. Polk out on the field again yesterday, 2 penalties, no catches. Caden Wallace has been hurt for a while, still not ready to come back. You start to go down the line of Javon Baker's not making an impact. Like they've gotten basically nothing out of their draft class aside from their quarterback, which again, the most important thing. But when you have 8 picks and you put 7 of them on offense, and then you're looking at the offense going, Polk's not doing anything, Baker's not doing anything. Jaheim Bell caught his first pass yesterday, I think for -1 yard. Like there's just not a lot happening there. You're not getting much help from the offensive line. Layden Robinson got benched in the second quarter because he couldn't block Jeffrey Simmons, which, oh, by the way, hard for anyone to do. But you probably should have planned for that before the game. And then they ended up kicking Nweno back inside the right guard as opposed to
Nweno's just a better guard. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the notion that he's a good tackle is foolish. What happened last year was
he's just like AVT. He's fine. He'll get you by.
Yeah, you're right. What happened last year was they were so bad at right tackle that when they moved him out there, you're like, oh, he's competent. And then somehow competent turned to he's a good tackle. No. He's a good guard who, when he's at his best, might be a really good guard. But as a tackle, that's not his bag. So they got a long way to go, which we keep saying. They're 2-7. They go to Chicago and play the Bears, who all of a sudden are
that game's winnable.
Yeah, it is. It is. Chicago's not playing great. There's a lot of rumors now around Eberflus again.
He hasn't won a Sunday game in like 18 games, whatever.
Yeah, it's 2 bad losses in a row. They don't look great. Before we get to some other games, though, the news came out Monday morning, and I think we fully expected this. The Saints have fired Dennis Allen after their 7th loss in a row. They got off to an unbelievable start this year, 2-0, scored 90-something points, looked fantastic. Then the injuries hit, and I think he's a fantastic defensive coordinator. Like I'd be signing up to hire him as my DC, 5 minutes ago. I'd have already made the call. Like I want to get you in here because I believe in you that much as a DC, but as a head coach, just not great. And you just kind of see it coming. And, they're going to go to Rizzi as the special teams coach is going to be the interim head coach, but that's not a good football team. I don't, maybe they get a little bit of life from the change, but I don't think it's going to be that much because I just don't think there's enough talent on that team.
Yeah, well, the quarterback's the biggest problem. He's been the biggest problem, and I've had enough of Derek Carr. Like to be honest, like it's a lot of it. It's not just the on the field stuff in which he's very bad. And don't look at the. I know this is like so. Don't look at the number. Like don't look at the numbers. The numbers of Derek Carr will always tell you a different story than the tape, than the way his teammates respond to him and the way teams respond. He's gotten Dennis Allen fired twice. Dennis Allen's not a good head football coach. We said it in the summer. I said it when they hired him. Some guys are meant to be coordinators, and that's okay. Like we give Adam Gase such a hard time and whatever. Like Adam Gase was statistically not a bad coordinator, but he's not a good head coach, not a leader of men. Dennis Allen, really good defensive coordinator, like one of the probably 7 best defensive coordinators in football.
Yep.
But he's gotten 2 head coaching shots now, and like it's gone really, really bad. And again, 18-24. Hey, yeah, is that the worst thing you're ever going to see? No. Robert's always 20-36. We've seen crazier things, but this Saints team was always. It felt like after Breeze, they should have blown it up and totally restarted. They didn't do it. This year was the perfect year to do it. Last year was the perfect year to do it, and they refused to do it. And they go and pay Carr a bunch of money. They have to restructure his contract. Now he's locked in there. And I know Michael Thomas is a loose cannon. Listen, I get it. And
right.
There's a lot to go. We have way more important things to talk about than Michael Thomas on Twitter. But it's not that Michael Thomas is the only one tweeting it. Everyone focused on that. Chris Olave's brother, like that to me was way more concerning. And first of all, I hope we're going to talk about Tua. Chris Olave's take, it's feels like every game red zone flashes to Chris Olave, evaluating for a concussion.
Yep.
And that's scary in its own right. And I hope Chris takes as much time as he needs to come back. I would, if I was him, I'm not sure I'm coming back this year, and I'm going to try to just like fully get healthy and give myself a break in a lost season. But Derek Carr's throws get these guys killed. Juwan Johnson yesterday too. Like, one thing I think Rodgers does better than anybody, and Brady's talked about this, and a lot of the old school guys, is Rodgers will never put a guy in harm's way. He will, if you notice, a lot of times people, he underthrew him. No, he did that on purpose over the middle to make sure you slide, be able to get your head down and whatever. Throwing
it's
over
the back hip thing too. You see a lot when guys are going over the middle, and you're like, oh, that's
behind him.
The announcement said that's a bad throw, and then you're like, well, no, there's a linebacker or a safety that if he puts the ball in front of him, he's a dead man. So I'm going to give you a chance, but I'm also going to give you a chance to protect yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on the Saints. I just feel like if I'm them, I'm trading every single person on that team I can in the next 27 hours. Cam Jordan, thanks for your service. You're very, very mouthy. You'll be good in media. You were a Saints legend. If you want to go try to win somewhere else, there you go. Demario Davis, same thing. Tyrann Mathieu. Kamara, I'm sure, is untradeable based on the contract they just gave him again, which whatever. Like anybody on that team you can move. I'd move and say 2026 or 2025, we're going to be a very bad team with Derek Carr as a lame duck quarterback. We're going to draft somebody, or maybe they believe in Rattler, who knows? But we're going to totally reset the cap. We're going to have the biggest dead cap hit in NFL history and the whole thing. And we're going to kind of do a little Broncos-ish from last year. And we're going to reset. We're going to get ourselves a good head coach. We're going to get ourselves a GM, even if, or we're going to get ourselves, we're going to do this thing.
Let me interrupt there for a second, because that is to me, the Dennis Allen thing was predictable, should have happened, did happen. Okay, fine. Mickey Loomis has been coasting since 2017 when he had the draft, and the draft is one of the all-timers. Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, those are your first 3 picks. Trey Hendrickson, Alex Anzalone, and Alvin Kamara. So, one
of the best ones we've ever seen.
Exactly. And that really helped them sort of bridge the gap between the first Breeze and the back end of Breeze. And I'm not a huge believer in the cap. I say this all the time. You can make it do whatever you want.
Yep.
They've made it do whatever they wanted for like 8 or 9 years. So when you do that, eventually this does come up. You have guys with void years coming out the wazoo, big money that they're not worth. And eventually, 7, 8 years into the thing, it does come to roost. It's come to roost now. Just take your medicine. Like you said, we're going to suck next year. We're going to play the kids, whatever. We'll patch this roster together with, undrafted free agents and a draft class and all that sort of thing. And like you said, move movable pieces for whatever you can at this point to just say, we're
Mike,
starting
just out of
now.
curiosity,
Let's reset.
right? You mentioned in 2016, they had a great draft as well. Rankins, Michael Thomas, Von Bell. After 2017, they've got one homegrown player that's made a Pro Bowl. One. Eric McCoy made 1 Pro Bowl, center taken in the second round in 2019. Of guys that are even still around the league that are decent. Pete Warner's a good, he's a decent player for them. Paulson Adebo, Olave obviously has some potential. I mean,
it's just there's just
Gardner Johnson,
right?
Who's not even he's not even a corner and/or there anymore.
Well, I think they took shots at Marcus Davenport. He was first round, I believe. Turner from Houston.
Peyton Turner,
right?
Trevor Penning. They also had these trades up. They gave up so much for Olave when I just the Saints. We said it in the preseason show. It's just like what your best players are all outside of Kamara, like 33 years old, and are like still functional and good, but they're just getting paid a bunch of money, and you don't have a quarterback, and the quarterback sucks the life out of the team. Like I just.
But other than that,
other than that, and you don't have a good head coach, like the Saints fans deserve better, and I just think when it's recognized, it's time to just blow it up. Denver said, "Look, the Russ deal sucked. Cut the cord. Let's move on," and they're better off for it.
You survived.
Yeah, I survived. I survived there. I almost had to mute myself during that coughing session.
No, you're right. We spent a lot of time on them. They just need to take their medicine. Period. End of story. You know who's not taking their medicine? Another coaching move. The Raiders, they fire offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. They also fire the quarterback's coach and the offensive line coach. This comes after the Raiders' 5th straight loss. They got stomped by the Bengals yesterday. Raiders are 26th in points per game, 18.7 per game, 29th in yards per play, averaging just 4.6 yards per play. This Getsy thing was doomed from the start. He wasn't good in Chicago. They tried to hire. They had Cliff Kingsbury hired. The Raiders had Cliff Kingsbury hired this offseason. He wanted a 3rd year. They balked at the 3rd year. So 2 days later, he's now the offensive coordinator of the Commanders. We've seen how that's gone quite well. Good for Cliff. That turned out to
Cliff
be.
might get another head coaching job.
I was going to say that thing couldn't have worked out better for Cliff in that regard. But I come back to this. It's a bad roster, and I don't think the head coach, and I know the owner, they don't know what the hell they're doing over there. Antonio Pierce may have had the locker room. They may have, usurped Josh McDaniels' power, rightfully so, and gotten Pierce hired. But despite playing a little bit feisty for them, talk about rudderless. I don't think he knows anything about what he's doing right now. He says the wrong things. He does the wrong things, and his team is not very good.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, we called the Pierce thing in the offseason. I literally said, and you said the same thing. You're like, this is a bad idea.
Yep.
If you go back and look, right, they beat the Giants at home when Daniel Jones tore his ACL. They beat Zach Wilson, and the Jets had no business losing that game. They beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day or Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving. That was the one win where you're like, wow, the Chiefs were, it was Christmas Day. Chiefs were a mess. They beat the Chargers and with Easton Stick, and they beat the the Broncos at the end of the year. Sometimes you got to look deeper than just the win-loss. And I don't know, man, like the McDaniels thing was so bad that anybody was going to look good to that locker room. And he was like, hey, a former player, he speaks our language. We're having fun again. We get through the year. There was no pressure on the team, right? Like what people I think sometimes forget is like, once you're eliminated like that, some guys start playing better because there's no pressure and they just say F it. And like other teams start to subtle quit. That's why it's so hard to look at these schedules for any of these teams. Hey, and we talked about the Jets. Oh, the schedule's easy. Like Miami might be awesome in 3 weeks, but Miami also might be 2-9. And like those guys start to just pack it in. That's what happens in the NFL. So the Pierce hire was a mess. I thought there were so many good candidates on the market this year. There was, let's go get a quarterback and an offensive guy, and they didn't do either. If you're going to go defense, I don't have a problem with a defensive head coach, but you got to have a great offensive staff. Getsy couldn't have gotten run out of Chicago faster. He wasn't good in Green Bay. He wasn't good in Chicago. Another one of the Hackett-like guys where it's like players don't hate him, but like it's like Fields. Anyone that is a Justin Fields stan knew, which I am not, but knew Getsy was a bit of a sham. To fire, I think Albert Breer had the report this morning. Only one guy besides Getsy on that whole offensive staff had more than quality control experience.
Unbelievable.
And now they fired 3 of them, pretty much anyone that had experience. But what's the plan here? Because I don't think they're going to be in a position to take a quarterback. And if I'm, look, we're going to get the Dion and Shador thing to the Raiders for months. And anyone that takes Dion as a head coach, good luck.
That's a Raiders move if there ever was one.
It's a Raiders move, but like really the Raiders move should be, I'm going to bring Lane Kiffin back, and they won't. But I'm just saying, hey, we want to develop a quarterback, be a fun offense, and go from there. They're just, man, they're frustrating because you look at that division, Sean Payton, who's probably the worst coach in the division right now, and he's a Super Bowl winning coach that's got the Broncos playing good football. I know they lost yesterday, but hey, man, they're 5-4, and like they're in a better spot than I think anybody thought they'd be at this point.
Oh, for sure.
Andy Reid might be one of the 3 or 4 best head coaches we've ever seen in this league, and he's got the best player in the sport. And the Chargers, oh, by the way, have nothing on offense besides Justin Herbert and a defense that's probably going to need to be redone in a year. And Jim Harbaugh is just they're beating a lot of bad teams. I get it, but like the Raiders are now in a division where I just feel like they're so far behind, Mike. And I don't know. I don't know unless it's fixable, unless you're a Jaden Daniels situation where you say, hey, we're really far behind, but we get the guy.
Right.
And I don't know if there's a guy in this class that makes you go, that's the Jaden Daniels, Drake Maye, Caleb level prospect. I just don't see it at this moment.
Yeah, and they reportedly did try to move up right in the draft to get, I think Jaden was the target, but whatever, whether it was Jaden, Drake Maye,
He went so good at Arizona State for Antonio Pierce.
No, it didn't really. That's a different story for a different day. You can Google that if you'd like. But yeah, it's interesting to me. And you brought up the Chargers point, and I know we're talking about the Raiders and their moves, but part of the league is about if you're building a competent organization and a competent football team, a smart football team, you beat those teams, right? You beat the bad teams. The backup quarterback's playing. We don't lose that game. It may not be pretty. It may be 20-10. It may be 17-13, but we don't lose that game. You don't have those sorts of slip-ups. And by and large, in his first year, Harbaugh's avoided the slip-ups. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, like Pierce and some of these coaches, Dennis Allen, like constantly. Like the Saints yesterday, just backtrack real quick. They like dominated the game, dominated the Panthers, and they still lose to the Panthers. Like that's what happens. Bad coach, bad staff, just the bad juju that goes along with it. And the bad teams find ways to blow games like that when they're the dominant team. And that's seems to be sort of the track that Antonio Pierce is on. And hey, look, when it's all over, Mark Davis can fire him too. So then he'd be paying Josh, who else? Josh, Pierce. He's got like 2 other guys that he's still paying. Just brutal. Let's hear from
the only thing
go ahead.
You mentioned there is what's crazy to me is that for an organization that is, let's be honest, there's a lot of reports about being somewhat cash poor, and which is, again, I think people don't realize that doesn't mean the Raiders are a poor organization. It just means like in terms of guaranteed salaries, firing coaches, that's where these things come into play. And I felt like this offseason was a chance to like, let's cut back on some budget. Maybe they did. I don't know what Antonio Pierce is getting paid. Most coaches' salaries are kind of not fully reported the way they actually are. Belichick forever was like, oh, he's only making $2 million, and we found out he's making like 25. Yeah, right. So like it's whatever. But I just felt like, again, they were another team this year where it was like, blow it up. Devontae should have been traded 6 months ago. The Jets offered 2 2s last year at the deadline, and they said no, and then they sucked. Anyways, like what a joke. We've said it before. I don't know. Maybe they're not going to do it. And maybe whatever, but maybe this was the year to say, get rid of Devontae. Why do we try Christian Wilkins to this huge deal and feel like he's not going to really help us win? Why not just like totally wipe it clean and build this thing from a young perspective? And like, we're going to get 2 1s for Max Crosby, 2 2s for Devontae. And we won't sign Wilkins. So have all this cap space in 25, 26. I don't know. I just feel like they were stuck in the middle.
Right. Especially when you're in a division with Mahomes. Like, Band-Aids aren't going to work. You're going to have to build the thing up and have a roster that's really good from 1 to 53. And they clearly didn't have that. But Carolina, 2 years ago, Brian Burns, was it 2 first-round picks or a first and a second?
2 1s from the Rams. Yeah.
And they say no. Then what do they trade him for? A second and a fifth, right? Like bad organizations make bad decisions because they're looking at the short term and not the big picture. When if you're looking at the short term, what are we really going to do this year? Even if we like 8 and 9, 9 and 8, what does that do for you? It doesn't do anything for you because your roster's still bad. Now you're picking later. Like it just skews the whole thought process. So they're getting kind of what they deserve. Let's hear from Prize Picks, who will give you what you deserve if you're into fantasy play and you got to think for the numbers. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Pick has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. We do it. We make our picks every Friday. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of different combinations. If you're feeling somebody's like, hey, Justin Jefferson, pretty much every game this year, he's over 70 yards. You go look up at Justin Jefferson's numbers. Look at the number. Do you think he's going to go over the number? Do you think he's going to go under the number? More or less. Very simple to do it. Very easy to get involved. All you got to do is download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get out $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, you download the app, use the code CLNS. You don't even have to win with the $5. You still get 50 free from Prize Picks, which is outstanding. It's free money. Highly encouraged to voice your following Prize Picks. I'm just reading, literally just reading what it says to read. That's not what I'm supposed to read. What I'm supposed to read is Prize Picks. Run your game. Nailed that one, didn't I, guys?
Yeah,
nailed it.
Dak Prescott, as of this pod, just reported will be missing multiple weeks. We can stick a fork in the Dallas Cowboys. We're not going to touch on it.
How about the shot of him on the sidelines? Like, we bleep and blow.
Was he wrong?
No, he wasn't wrong. I love the outrage. Like, look, we always say, like, these guys are in the spotlight and you got to be careful of what you do. But, like, he's on the sidelines. They're in the middle of a game. He's not thinking, like, the camera might be trained on me. And he just says to one of his guys, like, hey, we bleep and blow. And he's right. They do. It's a bad football team.
Micah Parsons, stop podcasting about top 10 quarterbacks and not putting a guy who's your guy and also is clearly a top 10 guy.
Yeah, that's not great either.
Would trademark Micah Parsons in a heartbeat, but
yeah,
he won't.
I would too. You want to pay him $35-40 million a year?
Yeah, have fun.
Let's go to Lions Packers. Supposed to be the best game of the day. Turns out terrible weather, so that did not help. Lions win 24-14. Sort of increased their stranglehold on the division. The thing that jumped out to me is the Packers are error repeaters. And that is a deadly sin in the National Football League. Bad decisions by a hobbled quarterback in Jordan Love threw another pick six. That's his second this year. He's got 10 interceptions on the season. They had a half dozen drops, 3 bad snaps. Turnover on downs when they had 3 cracks to gain 1 yard. Second, third, and fourth down. Could not get a single solitary yard. And penalties continue to be a problem for them as well. So they're an extremely talented football game. We talked about it on Friday. You could say that these are the 2 best teams talent-wise in the NFC. I don't know that my thought has changed on that in terms of talent, but the Packers have to fix some things here because that was kind of a stinker at home against the Lions.
Yeah, I wish I could combine Matt LaFleur and the Eagles roster and flip because I think the Packers are frustrating. Like I was really frustrated watching yesterday. You're at home, and I know the weather sucks. Like I get it. It felt like a playoff.
For the other guys too.
It sucked for both teams. No Jameson Williams, obviously, and the Lions talked a lot of crap going in this game. There's some plays that. I know people are upset about the Jordan Love play, and I'm not telling you not to be. If I was, somebody that's Aaron Rodgers, I'd be the same way. The Lions definitely have a little bit of a reputation of they probably are 1 or 2 steps over the line a lot of times. But I don't want to go too far down that road because I don't know intent, and I don't know what's being said. But yeah, that play kind of in the branch one even. I thought the ejection was a little soft. Brady was killing them. Which will be interesting if he gets in trouble for that, which is crazy. But it actually isn't really. It's the first time I think he just got into it and just told, which I love. I want Brady to be into the games. I don't want to hear do your job.
Announcers. He's trying to be Mr. Professional Announcer. What we need him to be is the guy who was the best. Was the best at his position for 20-something years and knows everything that any defense is trying to do and knows what guys should be doing. Running routes, blocking the whole 9 yards. Give me that guy and give me the competitor. And that's what your point there is. Like you saw the competitor come out and
got pissed.
Like, what the hell are we doing here? Right.
The other point, Brady got pissed, which is the play of the entire game that drove me nuts. Jordan Love. They talked about in the Fox set. They're like, if this wasn't the Lions, he wouldn't be playing. And to me, that makes me worried because if he wasn't really healthy in that weather, like what?
And he was hampered, clearly.
He was hampered, but if you give him 2 weeks to fully recover and finally get healthy, I feel like you might be better off in the long run than now. I don't know. He could have gotten really hurt yesterday.
Well, doesn't this go back to him coming back from the MCL? So he came back from the MCL against the Vikings, played terrible until late in that game when it was over, and then they just tucked it up a bunch of times. Right. And then the next week you look good. So you're like, oh, no, it was the right thing to do. But I'm sorry. The body is all connected. And if the MCL ain't totally right, is it a surprise that maybe he strained his groin because his leg isn't right?
Nope.
Like, no. So they would have been better off then. And we said it then. This isn't second guessing. I said they should play Malik Willis another game. They were 2-0 with him as a starter. Like, just let it ride one more game. And if you lose, okay, fine. But you buy himself a little bit more time. Instead, they rush him back. They split those games. He's not playing great. And now here you go again, where when's he going to be right? You need him to be right. If you're going to be the team that we think you can be, he has to be what we saw at the end of last year and what we've seen at various points this year in terms of some of the stuff that he's capable of doing. And they're risking that by doing what they did yesterday. Like, who knows how he's feeling today? I bet it's not very good.
No. Brady got pissed. It was the 2nd and 1. Love's rolling out, almost fumbles the ball. And Brady's like, throw the ball away, throw it away. And he's like, what are you doing? Get rid of the football. Like, why are you like, it's 2nd and 1. Like, you need this possession. What's the best case? You throw a touchdown here and it's like the craziest play we've ever seen. Like, why? And then 3rd and 1, throws behind him because it's wet out. And, Natavian Wicks drops it because it's, and that's what happens. And then 4th and 1, you don't get it. And it's like, the Packers are just frustrating because they are really good. They're really like, I like their head coach a lot. I like their roster a lot. I like their young players. I like their quarterback. I like all that stuff. But they still make a lot of really like dumb mistakes that they're not beating Detroit if they can't figure that out. I don't know that they're beating Philly unless Nick Sirianni pukes all over himself in a game. Like, I don't think they're a better team right now than the way Philly's looked with running the football and, the way they've started to play much better on the offensive side of the football. I don't know that in a game against San Francisco or even the Rams, like, I trust not only the coach, but I trust just like the infrastructure a little bit more right now. And I'm not trying to beat up on the Packers. They're still a really good team. They're one of the 4 best teams in the NFC minimum, like as a floor.
Yep.
But Love makes a lot of mistakes still that you're like, oh man, like, I feel like this would have been out of your game now. But I know maybe that's part of it. And we're not going to talk too much about, Darnold last night. I know they're very different caliber of players. But like, I can live with Sam making mistakes if he's going to throw touchdowns and make all these like awesome down the field throws. I can live with that with Love, but if that's not going to be part of your game because you're hampered injury wise, it's just like, I don't know. It's just frustrating. I felt like Malik Willis in the Reigns probably actually your best bet because you could run the football 65 times and
their best player was Josh Jacobs, right?
And Love would get basically 3 full weeks to recover from the groin. Maybe you upset, maybe you put a wrinkle into Detroit. They lose Branch and they lose yesterday without Hutchinson. Like, I don't know. I just feels like Detroit's taking the Green Bay suck stuff from Amon-Ra St. Brown and all that stuff. Like,
Brian Branch was giving him the bird after he got ejected.
They're backing everything up. And I think Detroit's a significantly better team at this present moment than Kansas City is. I don't know if they'll beat them because Mahomes is that guy and Reed's that guy, and the Chiefs are really good. But right now in a neutral field, the Lions should be 3-point favorites, if not more, against every single team in the league because all 3 phases are awesome, and they're probably going to trade for Zadarius Smith or a pass rusher in the next 24 hours and go, oh man, this team's not going to play outside the rest of the season. Like, that's, I don't know. They're really impressive. Like, they smoked them yesterday. I don't know. They're really damn good.
Yeah, it's a very good football team. Lions held the Packers to 1 of 4 in the red zone. Again, did it without Branch, who got ejected. Goff didn't have huge numbers yesterday, and I take back that he should be the MVP because Lamar was awesome again yesterday, and he's overtaken him in my power rankings. But smart, decisive with the football, accurate, didn't turn it over. Like, they just played a clean game. That was a good road football game from, as you mentioned, an excellent football team. Let's move on to the Bills, who survived the Miami Dolphins 30-27. Tyler Bass kicking a 61-yard field goal with 10 seconds left in the game. He's tearing up in the locker room. Teammates are tearing up. It was a whole thing. I love football, by the way. Just the emotion of it was fantastic. The game-winning kick set up by Jordan Poyer, one of the cornerstones of the Bills rebuild, who goes headshot on Keon Coleman, like, led with the head, should know better than that, like, just gifted them the opportunity to win the football game. And quite frankly, up until that point, I gave Miami a lot of credit. They never win in Buffalo. McDermott's owned that offense. Allen has owned their defense, the whole thing, and they had a chance there. and a veteran guy who you brought in to help stabilize the back end for you ends up screwing it up. The Bills have some holes. I kind of come away from. They've had some interesting things, like they consistently all year they've been bad out of the gate. They haven't started well, which right away played into Miami, gave them some confidence early on. Like, hey, okay, this might be different this time for the first time in a long time. Because they dug themselves a hole, they stopped running the football, which I think has still been sort of their commitment to it has gone in and out.
Jets. That's why
yeah,
they beat the Jets.
It's gone in and out, and it shouldn't. I think they're a good running football team. I think that's a really good offensive line. So they've got some things to figure out, and they definitely defensively. Von Miller was back yesterday to not much impact. Kind of affected Greg Rousseau, who had been awesome the last couple of games, but they moved Rousseau around a little bit. And they need Milano to come back. And that apparently is now not a matter of if, but when. Obviously, the sooner the better, so they can get some of that rust off as he's missed the entirety of the season. And that would make a big difference for them as they go forward and try to contend with getting through Kansas City and Baltimore in the AFC.
Yeah, this game was just weird because it felt like Miami was in a similar spot to the Jets. Maybe it's a little bit more. It was more dire for the Jets because they hadn't had their bye, but it felt like both teams this week had games where like they weren't expected to win. Playing two teams that are very much playoff teams and like to keep themselves alive. And yes, Miami's technically still alive. This week, I guess, is more like their version of what the Jets had last week. But
right,
I come away from this game like Tua played really efficient football. He's much more in quick release game manager mode, and the offense is much more like they need to run the football in order to be successful, and that's totally fine. Like I don't have a problem with that at all. The defense on Miami is just I don't think is great. I think there's some nice pieces there, but I don't think it's a great defense. And then like you mentioned with Buffalo, Bass misses the extra point and then nails a 61-yarder as to win the game naturally, as all kickers do. Buffalo's kind of escaped danger a lot this year, and I still feel like they're a really good team. I still feel like Josh is awesome. I'm not beating up on them. There is definitely some like, I think Josh Allen, 60% of his yards on the year are now yak yards, and like he used to be in the 30s and 40s. They're just a different offense, and I don't know. Maybe they're more built for cold weather, and maybe they're kind of their identities changed a little bit and stuff. But they're very light through the middle, and I think to myself, like, they play Baltimore again. Is Baltimore going to do the same thing that they did in the first time? Where is Kansas City going to go, hey, we have Pacheco back by the time they'd see them? Like, do they pound the rock 35 times? Or does Houston go back? Like, they played a lot of these teams already. We kind of know what we're getting. I don't know. Miami's not dead, but they kind of have to go on a huge run here. And I feel like they're closer to imploding than not. Like, if they lose another one or two games, they're probably done. And then they have such a veteran, heavy, highly paid team that it's like, those are the guys you usually see kind of coast a little bit, as opposed to like, this isn't a young team with all these guys that's going to play really hard for you.
Oh, you don't think Jalen Ramsey was going to be being locked in for 17 games?
No, I can't see Tyreek. Tyreek it has been weird. I still feel like they haven't gotten those guys back involved to the extent that I was expecting.
Well, watching the game back, and this is the second week in a row, and this is understandable, but Tua is still jittery.
Very jittery.
And they're crazy. Right. And they're definitely trying to let him get the ball out quick. Like it feels like they're not even attempting to really push the ball down the field. Like, hey, if you're going to do it, it's going to be, you're going to hit the 5th step on your drop and you're just going to let it go, right? Or the 7th step on your drop, and you're putting the ball up to a spot and go let Waddle or Tyreek go get it. But you're not sitting back there going through your progressions and then trying to make a play because, look, obviously we understand why, but even though they had 27 points yesterday, their offense from a pass standpoint has still been kind of limited. It's the best part of their game yesterday was running the football with Mostert,
Achane
and Achane. Yeah. So, and Wright, by the way, who's again one of those weird picks by them. They didn't need him in the 3rd or 4th round, but he's a really fun player. He's a really good football player. So yeah, Miami cooked. The Bills now 7-2, just completely running away with the division. someone tweeted today, like, as far as lopsided as it was all those years with the Patriots when they ruled the AFC East, this might be as just about a whooping in the division, if the Bills can maintain this pace and everybody else sort of middles, or as Miami and New
The
England
Bills are in an
probably gonna
interesting
do.
spot. The rest of their schedule is like damn near. They get Indy this week, then Kansas City, San Fran, the Rams, the Lions, then Pats, Jets, Bills. I mean, Pats, Jets, Pats. Like, they're probably still going to be like an 12-5, 11-6, just because I can see them like dropping a few here. Maybe, they got the primetime Chiefs, primetime Niners, primetime Rams, primetime, like maybe they go 2-2 there, 1-3, whatever. But they're going to, unless they epically collapse, which I just don't see happening, this division's pretty much over. Like, it's as close to over as it's going to be. And now it's about, can they keep pace with Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Houston to try to get that 2 seed? Because again, like, maybe it's Cincinnati or the Jets, which are in the 7 seed, but it also could be like Denver or Indy, and you're like, you're basically writing a ticket to the divisional rounds.
Right. And they've got to come to you in Buffalo, a difficult place to play where, I mean, Joe Burrow went in there a few years ago and won in the playoffs, but not an ideal place to go play. We got one more game to hit, but I want to quickly run through Game Time, which is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so now the World Series is over. We'll spend an arm and a leg to go watch the Yankees lose. I'm not reveling in that at all, I swear. Not at all, Will. Not. Hey, look, the Red Sox are going to do absolutely nothing in free agency again, or they're going to sign someone to a $100 million contract, and you'll be like, really? That's the best you could do? And we'll be in the same place next year. You guys will be playing for everything, and the Red Sox will have already been on the golf course for the last 6 weeks. But anyway, you want tickets, football games, plenty of college football games, pro games, as we hit the second half of the year, plenty of college football games as we march toward the first 12-team playoff in college football history. And obviously concerts, whatever you're into. Basketball season started. We got the NHL. You got all these different things that you can do. Just use Game Time picks. It filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Download Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Oh, yes, it is Game Time. And a bonus game, Rams Seahawks, because they were your pick, right? Coming out of the AFC, the NFC. And all of it.
I had Lions, Rams, NFC title game,
right?
And Chiefs, Ravens, I think. Chiefs, Jets.
And it did not look good. There a lot of injuries. They were in a bad way. Well, now they've won 3 in a row, including an overtime victory over Seattle, in which Matt Stafford once again proves he's underrated. Is he underrated? I think he's underrated. I think he's damn good. He's been damn good.
Yeah. This game was. I'm pretty down on Seattle. I think there's some moments they look really good, and I think McDonald's done a good job in terms of kind of, you can see the imprints of what they want to be, and there's moments where Geno looks good. I thought he's been okay this year. Good. I think he's been more 2022-ish, but not. I think it's a little bit, the completion percentage can be a little deceiving versus the rest of the overall play. JSN was a monster yesterday, and a lot of things. They blocked the punt. Their offensive line sucks. And like Braden Fisk, who on our first ever episode, I gave a shout out as one of the underrated guys. And obviously Jared Verse, what a draft. Les Snead. Why don't we talk about him as the best GM in football? I mean, the way he drafts it's unbelievable.
Yeah, after years of giving away their early picks, they absolutely crushed their early picks.
You're almost like, what would he have done if he had all those picks? Like, could he have gotten a better guy than Ramsey and Odell? Like,
he F the picks model. It got him a Super Bowl, so you can't really knock it. But yeah, he's done a fantastic job.
He's done a great job. And again, Stafford makes the plays that are needed. I thought McVay kind of did a little too. He had a few moments where I was like, I hate when the McVay does this, where he gets a little conservative and like. He threw on 3rd and 3 there when I don't feel like he had to, and he could have gone down and won the game at the end of regulation. But overall, this Rams defense is really young. I still don't fully trust them personally, but they've got some pieces to build around, obviously. And then on offense, like the Puka ejection, listen, I understand the letter of the law, and technically it was a closed fist punch, so I'm not advocating it wasn't, but it felt as weak of an ejection as you'll see for that type of. I mean, it kind of felt like I don't even know. It didn't feel like a punch. Maybe I'm wrong. Just,
I feel we see
That happened a
those
lot.
dust ups and we don't get ejections off it. It's just like, all right, these guys are,
the league office was trigger happy yesterday.
Yes, they were. There were a lot of phone calls or buzzing in of earpieces saying, you got to do this or you got to do that.
Yeah, but overall, look, the Rams are red hot. They've won 3 in a row. They've beaten good teams. I mean, they're beating Minnesota and Seattle and these other teams. Like, it's not these are not no San Francisco. This is not like they're cakewalking through the easy part of their schedule. It's all about, staying healthy with Stafford, Puka, and Kupp in the offensive line. And if they could do that, I don't know if they'll win the division or not. I think that they have a good shot for sure. And if they can figure out a way to win the division, but Mike, I don't know how to explain this. And by the way, the Geno interceptions yesterday were horrible. I mean, they were really bad. But the one takeaway, I guess, from this Rams team is, are they the team I trust most on the road in the NFL? They basically play road games all year. And I feel like their level of performance on the road, maybe the numbers aren't, I'm not looking at any stats, just like feel Seattle, Detroit, like they go in there and they play their game. And
think about last year too. Remember they went into Baltimore late in the year, crappy weather, and went toe to toe with phenomenal game.
They're like the opposite of the Rams teams that have won those Super Bowls, and we're in Super Bowls back in the late '90s. Like, that Rams team had to be at home. This is like the opposite. Like, I actually feel like they might play better outside in these weird elements, and like it's because they're tough, man. Their deep offensive line's tough. Like Stafford's as tough as it gets. Puka and Kupp are really physical. I don't want to get too high on this team. I'd love to see them maybe make one move and like strengthen that defense a little bit if they could. But realistically, like if I was betting on one team to win the division, unless McCaffrey's going to be McCaffrey when he comes back, I trust the Rams more than the Cardinals right now. And that division's wide open. So Seattle's got to be kicking themselves 4 in a row at home. They've lost. That's just, you can't do that if you want to go be a serious contender.
No. And that's, I think we talked about, I was high on Seattle because I'm high on McDonald, but he doesn't have the pieces yet. And they've had some injuries, and it's just, it hasn't been between that and the offensive line, the inconsistent run game. When Kenneth Walker is a really damn good player,
they're hard to beat.
It doesn't get the rock enough because they're just not moving people enough or whatever. They're not stopping enough, and they just go full pass mode. They need to strike a little bit better balance. That is going to wrap up this edition of the All 32. He is Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Giardi. We'll see you again at the end of the week. And a reminder, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, leave a review as we continue to build the brand. Again, we will see you at the end of the week to preview Week 10. Peace.